Okay, hello again. So for this module 2, the overview of software testing and motivation, I'm also thinking of doing this short video on some recent trends. This can also help you get an overview of what kind of topics are actually studied now in industry and in research. So let's go here. And there is a very good conference, sort of the main conference in software testing is called ICST, so International Conference on Software Testing for 2020. Um, it was supposed to be this week actually in Porto in Portugal. So myself and the research group for testing here at Chalmers, we were supposed to be there and present several of our own papers in this. So it was supposed to be in Portugal this week. So I had even lined up colleagues who were to give you the introduction to this course since I was meant to be away. But of course, because of COVID, it's been postponed at least until October later this year. So here you can see they have research papers, they have an industry track, which is more sort of papers that's been done together with companies, they have workshops, tool tracks, and so on. So I'm showing this to you because later when you are probably in academia or in more likely maybe many of you will be in companies, and if you want to stay ahead and up to date with what's going on, it's often very good to sometimes, you go to and check out the program for these type of research conferences because then you can see what's going on. So if we click on program here, and let's start with the research papers, and let's see what kind of topics they have here. Actually, I'm not sure. Can we see the abstracts here? We cannot. So I will go actually then to a link I got. So if you would do this from the outside, you can then look for papers based on the titles here. But since I was going to the conference, I got access to the actual papers in here. But most likely, most of these papers you can also find by searching in the open databases for research. So you see here my colleague Gregory Gay was supposed to present this paper, Learning How to Search. But let's look a little bit about, so in total, what kind of papers are in this conference this year for 2020? So you have like title messages from the chairs, the program chairs, and so on. And then we have keynotes, which are typically, prominent researchers or people in industry talking about things. So you have 3 keynotes this year was supposed to be one-click formal methods. I'm not sure. So some kind of formal methods, static verification validation done early, smart and also reliable and gas efficient contracts. So this is probably about crypto coin, Bitcoin, Ethereum type of contracts. So we don't need to go into that now. Sundew, systematic automated security testing. Of course, security testing is very important and a hot topic. So you see someone from Google was supposed to talk about this. But I'm thinking, so let's look a little bit about the overview here. What kind of topics have they grouped the papers into for this sort of latest research in software testing? So you see the research track here, and you see they divide the papers 3 by 3 or 2, sometimes 2, into specific sessions. So this was supposed to be in one meeting room presenting after each other, so they are somehow related. And you see the first topic is fault localization and debugging. So fault localization means given that a test or we found some problem, how can we locate the fault, the defect in the actual software? So we have 3 different papers on that. Let's not go into detail now. I just will maybe take a few examples of and go into more detail of the abstract. The next topic they had papers on was test generation. So this is going to be very relevant for your course. So this is how do we generate typically input data or test cases themselves that are good to run on the software. So you have language agnostic. The first paper is language agnostic generation of compilable test programs. So this is about testing compilers, testing software language tools. So how can we generate test programs which would be the input when you want to test a compiler, for example. Mimi's simple, efficient, and fast bounded exhaustive test case generator. So you can see these research papers have very long and complex titles sometimes, but this is about generating. So you see test case generate. How do you generate test cases? How do you generate test inputs, the data that's going to be used in a test case? So this is a new paper on that. And then we have the paper from my colleague here, Gregory, and his student, called Learning How to Search, Generating Exception Triggering Tests Through Adaptiveness. So this is the technique, but the goal here is to generate test cases that triggers exceptions, right? So this is important for us when we want to test software, to be sure that we trigger exceptions for the right and problematic inputs, right? And not for valid inputs, for example. So this is focus of that research. We can go into more details of some papers later in the course. I just want to give you an overview now. The next session was about testing deep learning and robotic systems. So this is very hot. And in the final part of this course, I'll go into some of our own work in this part about how do we test deep neural nets, for example. And this first paper here is by a colleague of mine, so Paolo Tonella. He's in Switzerland and someone that we collaborate a lot with. And I've also collaborated with his postdoc here, his student Gunnel. And they have evaluated empirically, so they've done some study here on mutation operators for deep learning systems. So I'll talk more about mutation testing later in the course. But this is a way that you change probably the deep neural net here, and so that you can study how good are the test cases in finding problems in the model. Then we have comparing offline and online testing of deep neural nets. So more on deep neural nets. Here's on autonomous cars. And this is from Lionel Briand and his group. This is a very famous researcher in this field and in software engineering in general. So I know him very well, and we have collaborated over the years. And then study on challenges of testing robotic systems. So you see, this session is now very hot kind of topic in testing. MISC, let's skip that. That's sort of other topics that didn't really fit the specific theme. Testing for APIs. So here we have some Swedish colleagues again. You see that Sweden is quite prominent and well known in the testing community. So this is about property-based test generation for RESTful APIs. So property-based testing we will talk about in part 3, so we'll get back to that. And other ways of testing APIs, web testing, of course, has been mobile, and web testing has been a focus in the last 5-10 years because of the rise of smartphones and more web-based applications and so on. So here we have interesting papers that I need to look at. Dependency-aware web test generation. So this is also from people we collaborate with in Switzerland. Metamorphic testing we will mention also in part 3. You see, most of these things we'll get back to in part 3. Optimizing testing. This is very much in focus in industry, right? In industry, they have these large test suites with a lot of test cases in them. And when you make changes to your software, you don't want to run everything, because running everything can be very costly, take a lot of time and so on. So you want to optimize, run the minimal set of and the most relevant set of test cases given a change. So this is probably about this type of thing. Empirical analysis and program repair. This is about not only testing and finding problems, but connecting back to and actually trying to repair the software. So finding the bug and making automatically changes. But you also have empirical analysis of tests in different systems. Yes, so these were just a little bit to see what's going on recently in the testing community. And we can get back to also what's happening in the industry track in a later video. Thank you very much.